On March 27, 1977, on a foggy little runway on a tiny island, the single deadliest accident in the entire history of aviation happened. It's an unbelievable story, really. A story of pure coincidence, immense pressure, and a fatal miscommunication that would go on to change air travel forever. So let's unpack the incredible chain of events that led to this absolute tragedy. 583. That's the number. That's what sets this disaster apart from all others. 583 people lost their lives when two fully loaded Boeing 747s, two jumbo jets, collided on the ground. To even begin to grasp the scale of this, you really have to listen to the people who were there. I mean, just think about that description from a survivor. It's not just a crash, it's a cataclysm. It paints this picture of a moment of just unimaginable violence that ended hundreds and hundreds of lives in a literal instant, and, of course, scarred the few survivors for the rest of their lives. So, the central question, the one that investigators puzzled over for months, is how? How could two of the most advanced jets on the planet end up on a collision course on the same runway? Well, the answer, believe it or not, lies in this shocking chain of events that seem totally unrelated at first. To really understand what happened on that runway in Tenerife, we actually have to rewind the clock a few hours. And we're not even starting at an airport. We have to go to a different island, to an event that, on the surface, has absolutely nothing to do with aviation. Yeah, the story of the worst crash in aviation history doesn't start with a pilot or a mechanical failure. It starts with a terrorist bomb that was planted in a flower shop. Okay, so here's the first domino. A local separatist group sets off a small bomb at the main airport in Las Palmas. In response, the authorities shut the entire airport down. Suddenly, a sky full of planes needs a place to land, and they all get diverted to this small regional airport on the nearby island of Tenerife, an airport called Los Rodeos. And among those planes were our two jumbo jets, Pan Am 1736 and KLM 4805, both now heading for an airport that was completely unprepared for them. You have to understand, Los Rodeos was in way over its head. It just wasn't designed for this kind of traffic. It very quickly became this chaotic, overcrowded parking lot for massive aircraft. And it created this pressure cooker environment where even small problems started to escalate fast. And this is where the layers of failure really start to stack up. Los Rodeos, it had one runway and just a few taxiways, which were now completely jammed. Then, out of nowhere, this thick, dense fog rolls in, dropping visibility from miles to just a few hundred feet. In the tower, you've got only two controllers who are just completely overwhelmed. And then there's this other crucial factor. The KLM crew was running up against brand new, very strict duty time regulations. This was the immense pressure facing KLM's chief pilot, Jacob van Zanten. Now, this guy was a superstar. He was literally the face of the airline in their advertisements, their top pilot. But if he didn't get his plane back to Amsterdam on time, he and his entire crew faced severe penalties. This pressure, this clock ticking in his head, it would lead him to make a really critical decision. To try and save time later, Captain Van Zanten decides to refuel his massive 747 right there in Tenerife. This one decision had two catastrophic consequences. First, it delayed their departure by another 35 minutes, which allowed that fog to get even worse. And second, it physically blocked the Pan Am jet, trapping it behind him on the congested tarmac. Oh, and the 55 extra tons of fuel, it made his own plane significantly heavier and slower to take off. So this all builds to the final fatal minutes. With all the normal taxiways blocked, the controllers told both jets to do something called a backtrack. Basically, to taxi down the main runway, turn around, and then take off. They were now on the exact same strip of asphalt, completely invisible to each other in the fog. This is the moment. This is where it all goes wrong. The KLM captain, just anxious to get going, asks for takeoff clearance. The tower tells him, "Stand by for takeoff, I will call you." But at the exact same second, the Pan Am crew radios in that they are still on the runway. Those two simultaneous transmissions created this high-pitched squeal on the KLM radio, and it totally garbled the tower's most critical words. Stand by for takeoff. The KLM captain only heard the Pan Am crew, and he tragically misinterpreted their message. He thought they were already clear. He pushed the throttles forward and said to his crew, "We're going." Chilling. Those were the last words recorded on the Pan Am cockpit voice recorder. Through a brief, sudden clearing in the fog, they saw the landing lights of the KLM 747 hurtling towards them.
The Pan Am captain slammed the engines to full power, desperately trying to swerve off onto the grass. The KLM pilot, realizing his horrifying mistake, tried to pull the plane up, but it was too heavy. He dragged the tail on the runway for 20 meters. It was just too late.
In the aftermath of this unbelievable tragedy, investigators from Spain, from Holland, from the United States, they all came together to piece together what went wrong. And what they found wasn't a single cause, but a devastating, almost unbelievable sequence of events.
This chain of errors is a perfect example of what safety experts call the Swiss cheese model. Think of each step as a slice of Swiss cheese. Each error is a whole. Now, on any other day, any one of these things happening alone would have been harmless. But on March 27, 1977, for the first and only time in history, all the holes in all the slices of cheese lined up perfectly, allowing for a disaster to pass straight through. But out of all this horror, the investigation led to something that is now the global standard in aviation safety, something that has undoubtedly saved countless lives since. It's a concept called crew resource management, or CRM for short. You see, before Tenerife, the culture in the cockpit was that the captain's authority was absolute. It was the captain is God era. Junior officers were often hesitant, or sometimes even afraid, to question a decision. In fact, the investigation revealed the KLM flight engineer had questioned if Pan Am was clear of the runway, but he was quickly overruled by the captain. CRM completely flattened that hierarchy. It empowers and, in fact, it requires every single crew member to speak up, to challenge assumptions, to work as a collaborative team. The safety you experience on every single flight you take today is a direct result of the incredibly painful lessons learned from this disaster. Ultimately, Tenerife is just this stark reminder, isn't it? Even in our most technologically advanced systems, human factors, things like stress and pressure, authority, and simple misunderstanding, they remain the most challenging and the most critical variables to manage. And really, that's a lesson that extends far, far beyond the cockpit.